Okay, so if I can stop hitting the table, we are going to do a top 23 books of 2023 for that I've read. So we'll just get into it. I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top so that you will get my favorite book of the year last. So here we go. So at number 23, and I'll put these on the side or something so we can keep track, but number 23 is Red Queen. It was a really good fantasy and I loved how it started out. Not so much how the series ended. It got really hard to follow, at least for me personally, towards the end. And decisions that characters were making I did not agree with, but that's okay. But the first book was amazing, so I loved it. 22, Ace of Shades. This one was like a gambling fantasy type thing where a girl's adoptive mother goes missing and then she has to travel to this different continent to try and find her and see if she's even still alive, and there's gangs and stuff and it's great. 21 was The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This one took social media and the book community by storm and then just disappeared. It was kind of weird. Back in like March, I think, it became pretty popular, and it is like a vampire fantasy type thing. There is some romance in it, and I've heard people describe it kind of like the Hunger Games, and I would agree with that because they go into this competition and it's mostly vampires except for the main character, which is a human girl, but she was raised by this vampire king ruler guy. And so she's pretty ruthless, and you get to kind of see how she does in that competition and if she lives. And it was a good story. And I have the novella and the second book for that, and I will be reading them hopefully soon in this new year. And then next was One Dark Window. That one's been pretty popular more recently because the second book of that just came out, which I haven't had a chance to read yet. But I listened to the audiobook of One Dark Window. Loved it was just very different from fantasies that I have been reading throughout this whole year. And it had a different feel to it, which was pretty cool. I liked it. Yeah, I've told you guys a lot about it, so I won't bore you with that. Number 19 is Daisy Jones and the Six. I watched the Amazon Prime series of it first, and I was like, I have to read this book. I have to know if it's as good as the series or if it's even better, because I loved the series that Prime made. And I was honestly surprised with how well it stuck to the book. The book had a little extra detail, but honestly, the series got almost everything exactly the same and how it happened in the book, which was amazing. Like, you don't see that very often. Okay, and then 18, I put Caraval. I love the Caraval world, the universe, Caraval universe. You guys know that I just recently got the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I'm so excited to be reading those in the new year as well. And I just love the characters and the feel of the setting and everything. I love Tim Burton, and I love like kind of creepy mystery, like you don't know everything, games type thing. Yeah. And so those are the vibes that it gave me while I was reading it, and I'm so excited to finish that series and then start the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. These Twisted Bonds is number 17. I read the first book to that duology last year, and so I started this year out with reading these Twisted Bonds, and it was a good ending to a very well done duology. I won't tell you much about it because there's only 2 and it's the second book in that, but it was really good, and I really loved the characters, and some of the characters even got a redemption arc at the end, so it was interesting to see and to read. Number 16, Mockingjay. We're all Hunger Games fans. At least I think we're all Hunger Games fans. I'm a big PETA stan, and I have my degree in psychology. I think I've mentioned that several times. I need to stop talking about it. But it was interesting to see now that I have a degree in that, and then rereading Mockingjay, because last time I read it I was like 13, 14. And now reading it, I see like all these trauma responses that Katniss is having during Mockingjay, because she's gone through, first of all, fighting for her life in an arena, and then a war, a rebellion, and basically not knowing if she would live another day, hardly ever. So it was just very interesting to kind of see her reactions and see her trauma response, and just know that it makes a lot of sense, honestly, for everything that she is thinking and decides and what she does. Anyways, 15 is Love Theoretically, and I love Allie Hazelwood's books. Love Theoretically is definitely my favorite. Her STEM romances, I just love. I love when a character, especially a female main character, can be shown as being smart and independent, kind of, but still wanting that romance side of it too. Because I feel like a lot of times in romances, it's either, oh, they're smart and they don't want a relationship, or they're dumb and they only want love. Like, I'm glad that we have been starting recently with authors, have been starting to mix those two things together, because you can be smart and still want love and romance. Anyways, rant over. 14 is The Only One Left, and I loved this one. This is probably one of my favorite Riley Sager books. It gave me I'm very into like old time murder mystery type things. So like Lizzie Borden, that case. I love hearing things about that case. Jack the Ripper, I love hearing stuff about him. Because it's just so interesting that people could get away with that back then, because they just didn't have the technology or the know-how, how to solve crimes. And so it definitely gave those vibes in The Only One Left. Okay. 13 is Verity. And when I started reading this, it was night, and I was reading it and I was having a good old time. And then it got scary. So I had to wait till the next day to finish it, but I finished it within hours. And it was good, and it scared me at some points, but it was fun, and I really, really loved it. Yeah. Most of you know what that's about, because it's a Coho book, and I feel like everyone and their dog knows about Miss Colleen Hoover and has their very strong opinions about her. I am not as much a bigger fan of her other books, but I did love Verity. Let's see. Number 12 is I'm Glad My Mom Died. This was a memoir by Jeanette McCurdy, and it was actually, I listened to the audiobook of this, and it's actually her that read the audiobook, which was very cool. I love when people who write memoirs and autobiographies and stuff get to read their own writing, because I feel like it just makes it more personal and more impactful. It was a really good book. I would highly suggest that book if you're into memoirs, and even if you're not, because this was probably the first memoir I read / listened to, and I loved it. Number 11, Killer Instinct. This was in the second book in the Natural series, so I won't tell you much about it, but I did love the Natural series. I actually put the Naturals farther down on this list, so I'll explain that when I get to it. Number 10 was Wildfire. I love Russ Callahan so much. He's just a golden retriever boyfriend, and you'd expect him to be like super confident and just very kind of like, act like a jerk because he's on the hockey team and he's cool and he's a jock, but he's actually so sweet, and he is just very nervous talking to cute girls and all that stuff, and like, oh, he's just such a cutie, and I love him so much, and I loved that book, and I loved, you guys already heard about this in my wrap up, but I love the banter between them because it's just great. Number 9 is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I loved this book so much. I cried, and the fantasy aspect of it. So it's about this girl who very, like, hundreds of years ago, she made a deal with death that, I don't even remember what the deal was, but basically what happened is that she ended up not ever getting older, not aging, nothing changed for her, but nobody could remember her if she left the room, or if they looked away from her and then looked back, they wouldn't remember who she is, which was really, really an interesting take on a fantasy realism type thing, because she was just in the regular world, but it was death that made this deal with her, and so it was very interesting, and I really loved it. There's some really good quotes in there, and yeah. Number 8 is The Naturals. So The Naturals is, now that I can explain this, The Naturals is a group of teenagers who join the FBI unofficially. They each have special talents. So, like our main character, she's very good at profiling people. And each of these characters, you learn why they're so good at these things throughout the book, so I won't tell you why they're so good at them, but she's really good at profiling. There's another really good profiler, Dean, and then there's a bunch of other characters, like, one of the girls can, like, immediately know if somebody's lying. Another one can read emotions really well, even if it's just slight, like, a change in their eyes, or, like, tensing of, like, their hands or something. Like, very slight changes, he can detect those and notice emotional changes in that person. And it was just really cool. They crime solved together, and it felt very just fun and like Criminal Minds, but also like Scooby-Doo. But yeah. And then number 7, Book Lovers. I am a big Emily Henry fan this year. I read, this is the first year that I've read any of her books, and I have loved every single one that I've read. Book Lovers, I already gave you guys the synopsis of it in one of my past videos, but it was just so cute, and I love Nora and Charlie, and the setting of the small town, but they don't like it. I think that was hilarious, and kind of cutesy. Alright, number 6 was Summer Haven, and this is a Regency romance, and it was just very good, and it's a brother, it was a best friend's older brother romance, and they kind of fake date a little bit in it, which was kind of fun. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that without ruining anything. But it was very, very cute, and I'm actually a big fan of Regency romances, but I feel like I give them like 4 stars, 4.5 stars, but this one was a 5-star because of how much I loved it. The next one that I have is Beach Read at number 5. So we're in the top 5 now. So Beach Read is number 5. I love Beach Read with my whole soul. It was my first Emily Henry book that I read this year ever. And the characters in it just are so near and dear to my heart. I love them so much, and I just love it so much. January and Guess are literally angels, and I love them, and it was the perfect book. I don't know. But I have no issues with it, and you cannot tell me otherwise. So, yeah. Number 4 is A Man Called Ov. This one was heartbreaking. My parents went and saw the movie before I even read the book. My parents went and saw the movie and told me this is one that you need to either watch it or read it as soon as you can. And so I did, and you follow this man called Ov, and it flips between the past and the present. In present day, he's old, and he lives alone, and you learn this within the first few pages. He is basically trying to find time to kill himself, but all these things keep happening that he is like, well, I have to stay here so I can fix that, or I have to help these people do this. And he's a very grumpy man, so he does these things begrudgingly, like they're putting him out because he wants to off himself, basically. And he keeps getting interrupted, but it's kind of, in a way, he finds things about life that make him want to stay. And I sobbed so hard. And all the things you learn about him throughout his life, and then how the interactions that he has with his neighbors is just precious. And you will sob if you read this book, because it's so good. It's heartbreaking, and yeah, it's a good one. I'm gonna cry right now. Okay, next. All right, number 3 is Fourth Wing. No surprise here. I love Fourth Wing, and it was great. I don't like the sequel as much, the second book, but I will continue to read the series because Fourth Wing was such a good, like, introduction to that world, and it is such an easy read that even if you're not into fantasy, it's a good way to introduce yourself to fantasy. So if you're looking for a book like that, that's definitely one. Dragons and magic and a war college, and you learn a lot of things, and yeah, it's a good book. And there's romance, obviously. Romance is very heavy in this book, which makes it more appealing if you're new to fantasy, because then it's like not as hard to, it's because it's not as focused on world building and fantasy aspect. It's more just like, oh, here's a romance, plus there's dragons and magic here, and yeah. So number 2, so these last 2 are actually books that I've read this month. Number 2, I read it the very first of this month, and it is Assistant to the Villain. And I didn't know that this was a series till probably like halfway through the book. And I was like, wait a second, I've heard about this book, and it's a series, and there's only the first book out right now. And but it's about a girl who comes to work for a villain because they meet in the first chapter, and he saves her from these people who are chasing after him that she accidentally runs into. And so he saves her and offers her a job because she just lost her own. And so she starts earning money because she has to take care of her sick father and her sister. And she has been working for the villain for a few months by the time that you get into the book. And just seeing the banter between them and the way they interact is adorable, because he's trying to be like this, yeah, I'm a bad guy, I'm a villain, like, and she's just like, I got you a muffin today, like, that kind of vibes. And he's like, But, yeah, so they're just so cute, and I love them, and I'm so excited. I think the second book's coming out in August, so it's one of my more anticipated reads for the coming year, and we will go through those in a different video. But, alright, and what we've all been waiting for, number 1 book that I've read this year is one that I just finished a few days ago, which I didn't think anything would top Fourth Wing. And then The Assistant to the Villain came around, and then this number 1 book I read, and it's been sitting on my shelf for probably 4 or 5 months. And I was just like, you know what? I'm in the mood for this. I want to read it. I've been hearing a lot of good things about it. Divine Rivals. And in the book community, I know that there is a boycott going around on St. Martin's Press. So, I will just say what this book is about and that I love it. This book is about a man and a woman who work at a newspaper together, and they are rivals because they're competing for the same promotion. And then there's a war going on between the gods, and she ends up going to the front lines, and he follows her. And romance buds, and just things happen, and it ends very sad. I did cry. And I'm excited for the second book to come out, which is coming out the day after Christmas. And Rebecca Ross, let's talk about Rebecca Ross for a second, because she is such an amazing writer. All of her writing is beautiful. I read another one of her books, Sisters of Sword and Song, and it was just as beautiful as Divine Rivals. I actually read it before Divine Rivals. And that's what made me want to read more of her books, is just because her writing is so poetic in a way, and she just has a way of making everything sound beautiful and lovely. And yeah, so I'm very excited for her book to come out. And yeah, that was my number 1 book for the year. So it was a shock to me. I was not expecting it. I thought Fourth Wing was going to be in my top. Those are my top 23 books of 2023. And yeah, that's all I have for this video. And I will see you guys in another one. Okay, bye!